JD Vance, a senator from Ohio, accustomed to the luxury of Washington and the simplicity of the Midwest, stepped onto the marble steps of one of the most prestigious restaurants in Paris, Le Château Élégant. He was accompanied by an advisor, perfectly dressed in a dark suit that looked too formal even for the place. As soon as they entered, silence fell over the elegant room. The Parisian guests paused for a second, and the waiters, with polished elegance, pretended not to notice anything. A thin administrator in a classic black suit approached Vance, with a slightly contemptuous expression on his face. His eyes ran over the American, as if assessing every detail, from the choice of tie to the shine of his shoes. "Bonsoir, monsieur. How can I help you?" he asked with a slight smile that did not bode well. "We have a reservation for two, JD Vance," the senator replied, not paying much attention to the restrained coldness in his interlocutor's voice. The administrator raised his eyebrows, as if he had heard something particularly funny. His fingers ran over the tablet, although his face immediately made it clear that he already knew what he was going to say. "I'm sorry, but we can't offer you a table." "What?" Vance frowned. "I made a reservation in advance." "What's the problem?" "Unfortunately, monsieur, we can't accommodate you today. Have a good evening." And with these words, the administrator gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod to the waiter, who immediately turned his back and began to fix something on the bar, as if he hadn't noticed the scene. Vance looked around in confusion, hoping that this was some kind of mistake. But no, at the neighboring tables the French audience watched him with the same indifference as the administrator. No one was going to explain to him the reason for the refusal. "This is some stupid mistake," the senator grumbled to the advisor, but the latter only shrugged his shoulders. The administrator waited patiently for them to leave, as if nothing special had happened. JD Vance looked into his eyes again, trying to catch at least a hint of the real reason for such a reception, but he met only impeccable, verified French politeness, the same one that could be sharper than any open contempt. JD Vance was not used to such refusals. His career in politics and business had taught him that money and status would open any door. But here, in the heart of Paris, stood before him impassive Frenchmen who did not even consider it necessary to explain their refusal. His face turned red, and his fists clenched. "This is simply nonsense," he thundered, raising his voice sharply. "Call your manager for me, immediately." The administrator did not blink an eye, as if he had expected exactly this reaction. He silently motioned with his hand to the young waitress, and she quickly disappeared through the door leading to the office. A tense silence reigned in the hall. The Parisian guests began to perk up their ears imperceptibly. When a rich and influential American explodes in an elite restaurant, it always promises an interesting spectacle. A minute later, the restaurant manager appeared from behind the curtain, a stocky man in his 50s with perfectly styled graying hair and a sharp, almost predatory look. His suit looked as if he had just stepped off the podium, and his gait was so slow and confident that it gave the impression that he was the owner not only of this restaurant, but of the entire block. "Monsieur, I am Jean-Pierre Lemoyne, the manager of the establishment. Is there something you don't like?" His voice sounded calm, but with that note of superiority that immediately angered Vance even more. "Can you explain to me what the hell is going on here?" The senator growled, his hands almost shaking with anger. "I had a reservation, I came from overseas, and your manager just tells me that I can't sit down. I'm not some random tourist." The manager sighed and shook his head slightly, as if he were not a political figure but a capricious child. "Monsieur Vance, in your position you should understand, not all doors open just because you push them." His eyes narrowed, and a barely noticeable smile appeared on his face. "What does this even mean?" Vance had literally lost his self-control. His voice boomed throughout the restaurant. The guests, who a moment ago had pretended not to be interested, were now openly watching. Some even took out their phones, preparing to record the moment that would surely go viral on social networks. "It means you will not be served here," Lemoyne replied coldly. This is discrimination. This is a scandal. This is unacceptable. Vance shouted, cutting the air with his hands. If you don't like something, monsieur, I can call a taxi for you. But you won't stay in my establishment for another minute. The manager maintained perfect composure, as if he were not a politician but some ill-mannered guest spoiling the atmosphere of the evening. And then something happened that stunned everyone. Vance tore the menu off the table and threw it on the floor. Several shocked exclamations were heard in the hall. The waiters froze. Several guests even clapped their hands, but clearly not in support of the senator, but rather mocking his outburst of emotions. Lemoyne smiled wider. You should leave before it gets even worse for your image, monsieur. Vance stood there for another second, breathing heavily, then turned around and, muttering an oath, started towards the exit. The counselor threw the manager an apologetic look and hurried after him. The doors closed, and the restaurant erupted in light laughter and applause. The French evening continued as if nothing had happened. JD Vance walked out of Le Château Élégant, his eyes blazing with anger. His fists were clenched so hard his knuckles were white. He felt humiliated, mocked, and powerless. But it wasn't the first time someone had tried to disrespect him, and he knew the best way to fight back in 2025 was through social media. As he climbed into the black sedan waiting outside the door, his advisor had his phone at the ready. Are we going to Twitter? He asked, knowing that Vance wouldn't let this story go unchallenged. Twitter? We're going full on. All platforms. Let this snobby establishment know what real pressure means. First strike, Twitter/X. A few minutes later, the senator's account posted. JD Vance, at JD Vance 1. Imagine, you're an American senator, you arrive in Paris, you have a reservation at a prestigious restaurant, and you're just turned away. No explanation. No reason. This isn't just disrespect, it's contempt for every American. The French elite has shown their true colors again. At Le Château Élégant, you just made the biggest mistake of your life. The tweet garnered 50,000 likes in the first 15 minutes. But Vance didn't stop. Instagram and Facebook, image strikes. He posted a video recorded outside the restaurant. Look at this place. Le Château Élégant is a restaurant where they humiliate you for being American. Where you are simply thrown out without explanation. They think they can do this to me, and they can do this to you. They want our money, but they don't want us here. It's time to show them who's boss. A storm broke out in the comments. Boycott. The French have never respected America. This is just racism against Americans. Close their restaurant. I had a reservation here for next month, cancel. The restaurant's rating on Google reviews and TripAdvisor began to drop rapidly. The second blow, the conservative media. JD Vance called his acquaintance from Fox News, and an hour later the headline thundered on the air. French restaurant kicks out U.S. Senator. Is it time for a boycott? Angry videos began to appear on conservative YouTube channels. Scandal in Paris. U.S. Senator kicked out, but will teach them a lesson. Another anti-American provocation. Why does Europe hate America? The example of the restaurant Le Château Élégant. Each story added fuel to the fire. The final blow, losing a Michelin star. But the worst awaited the restaurant. Vance contacted acquaintances in American diplomatic circles, hinting that the restaurant could be added to the blacklist for U.S. officials. When the information reached the chef of Le Château Élégant, he clutched his head. Reputational attacks began to threaten the Michelin star, and for a restaurant of this level, this could mean disaster. The result after 24 hours. Instagram and Facebook, a wave of negative comments under each post of the restaurant. Google reviews, the rating fell from 4.8 to 2.3 in a day. TripAdvisor, hundreds of negative fake reviews from outraged Americans. French media, Le Château Élégant at the center of an international scandal. The French respond, but it's too late. The restaurant's manager, Jean-Pierre Lemoyne, was forced to make a statement. We respect all guests, but the restaurant reserves the right to refuse service under certain circumstances. We regret the situation with Senator Vance, but we will not comment on the reasons for it. This statement only fueled the anger. The restaurant suffered a large-scale reputation crisis. Vance became a hero to American patriots, who saw him as a defender of national dignity. But the biggest blow awaited a week later. Michelin announced a review of the restaurant's status. JD Vance just smiled, looking at the phone screen. They thought I would just forget. But now they will forget about their star. A week had passed since the scandal. Le Château Élégant, once one of the most prestigious restaurants in Paris, was now the epicenter of a reputational disaster. Instead of the queue of diplomats, businessmen, and stars who had previously strove to get in, the restaurant was now hosting an army of journalists. Cameras waited at the entrance, catching the management's every move. And inside, in the main hall, the restaurant's manager, Jean-Pierre Lemoyne, sat in front of his laptop, wiping sweat from his forehead. He was reading a recent report. Google reviews, 1.8 stars. TripAdvisor, more than 5,000 negative comments. Weekly losses, more than €500,000 in cancelled reservations. Michelin sent an official notice of a possible review of the restaurant status. It was a disaster. The manager calls Vance. Jean-Pierre sighed and dialed the number that seemed to be burning in his phone. Monsieur Vance, this is Jean-Pierre Lemoyne. We would like to offer you our deepest apologies for the unfortunate incident that occurred at our restaurant. There was a few seconds of silence on the other end. Then the familiar voice of the senator came in. Oh, you finally remembered who I am? What happened? Too many empty tables. Lemoyne swallowed. Monsieur Vance, we admit that we may have done something wrong. We would like to invite you to a special dinner at our restaurant. At our expense. The chef will personally create the menu in your honor. Are you kidding? You threw me out first, and now you think I'll be bribed with a free steak? Lemoyne tried to sound as calm as possible. We want to show you that we respect our guests. Moreover, we are ready to make a formal statement of apology. Silence again. Vance savored the moment. Okay. An apology is the right thing to do. But you know what? It's too late. Monsieur, we are ready to do everything we can to. Everything we can? Then listen carefully. You write a public statement, admit that you were wrong, and promise to make your restaurant friendly to Americans. And also, you take down the EU flag at the entrance. I want to see an American one there. Lemoyne almost choked on air. That's impossible. Oh, then keep the 1.8 stars on Google. I think soon you will only serve bloggers who make videos of, I eat at the worst restaurant in Paris. But. No, but. You were given an opportunity. You lost it. Vance hung up. That same evening, Le Château Élégant issued an official statement. We sincerely regret the situation that arose between our restaurant and Senator Vance. It was a misunderstanding that we are committed to correcting. We express our respect for all guests, regardless of their origin, and we promise to improve our service policies. We hope that we can restore the trust of our American customers. But it was too late. The comments under the post on Instagram and Facebook consisted of, "Too late, your restaurant is dead, the boycott continues," and a gif of Vance smiling smugly. The restaurant tried to run an ad campaign on Google, but it was immediately flooded with negative comments. Michelin did not respond to the statement, and a month later the restaurant lost its only star. Jean-Pierre Lemoyne resigned. And JD Vance? He uncorked a bottle of whiskey in his Washington office and scrolled through his Twitter feed. Le Château Élégant was officially destroyed.